Hey there, welcome to Hobie on YouTube. I hope everybody's doing well. This time around I have two early, hard to get, unofficial scout knives from Schrade to show you. Schrade is a very popular name with collectors. It's a company that's been around, or had been around for a long time. It was founded in 1904 by 3 or 4 brothers in Walden, New York. One of which was George Schrade. He left pretty early on in 1910 and eventually established his own company, the George Schrade Cutlery Company of Bridgeport, Connecticut. He was famous for his switchblades. And it's kind of interesting, that company was in business until 1956 when it was bought by Boker USA. But Boker had to close it just 2 years later when switchblades became illegal in the United States. So that kind of sucked for Boker. Back to 1947, two big companies, Ulster and Imperial, merged to form Imperial Knife Associated Companies, which turned around and bought Schrade in like 1948, and the name was changed to Schrade Walden. But the plant in Walden, New York was eventually closed in 1957 or 58, and all the equipment was moved to the Ulster factory in Ellenville, New York, where all the knives were made from that point forward until Imperial Knife Associated Companies went bankrupt and closed in 2004, which ironically was the 100th anniversary of Schrade, right? But the brand names were sold to Taylor Brands, and that's why you'll still find Schrade, Uncle Henry, and Old Timer knives out there. Thus ends another little history lesson on an old knife company. And I hope you were paying attention, because that's all going to be on your final exam. And that grade goes in your permanent record. This is actually a pretty rare unofficial scout knife, one that's hard to get. This is Schrade's model 9463, the one that reads Scouts Prepare on the shield. And it dates from the 1920s or 1930s. Now, Schrade didn't start making official Boy Scout of America knives until the 1970s or 80s. But, you know, a lot of companies back during this time would put things on their knives to make them sound like official Scout knives. There were only a few knife companies that were licensed to issue official Boy Scout knives. New York Knife Company at first, then Remington and Ulster, and a little later Landers, Frary, and Clark. But other knife companies like Case and Schrade here, they had 4-bladed utility knives, and they wanted to market them kind of as scout knives or scouting knives. So they would put all kinds of things on the shield like Scout or Scout knives, Scouts Prepare. They would put similar things on the blade etch. But I like to point out that no official Boy Scout of America knife ever had a badge that said Scout or Scouts or anything like that. What they did have was the Scout motto, "Be Prepared." So here you can see this is kind of a rip-off of that, Scouts Prepare. And I understand that two other companies, Camillus and a company by the name of Dixon from Germany, also used this motto, Scouts Prepare, on the shields of their 4-bladed utility knives. So that's interesting. I've also seen these early Schrades where this Scouts Prepare is turned the other way, so it appears upside down when you hold the knife in this orientation. And that's kind of interesting. But this is just a wonderful knife. It has these early pick bone handles. And just look at that jigging pattern, pick bone. It's really pretty. And these are flawless. Has lined nickel silver bolsters, and lined bolsters are kind of the mark of a nicer knife. Kind of a delicate nickel silver attached bail here. Brass pins. Nice thick brass liners on this one. Everything carbon steel, of course. But here's the main blade. And on this one, it's a little narrow because it's been sharpened over the years. You can see there's not much of a choil left there. I think originally they were a little wider than that, and I'll show you on the next knife. But here's the tang stamp, and this is a great way to date your Schrade knives. This one reads Schrade top line, Cutco second line, and Walden NY third line. And that Schrade on the top line is straight. And so that dates this knife from 1917 to 1946. That was about Schrade's fourth tang stamp. The one just prior to that read the same, except for Schrade was curved. So pre-1917 that would have been curved. But I'm going to put up a Schrade tang stamp chart that I found in a Knife World magazine, June of 2004. Helpful article in there. And you can take a look at that, maybe take a screenshot of it. There's nothing on the back side. Here is the screwdriver cap lifter, and it's marked as well with the same tang stamp. Now some of these earlier ones would also have the Presto Light gas tank key in the screwdriver cap lifter. What I'm referring to there would be a square cutout right here in the blade, which was used to open and close the valve on acetylene gas tanks that resided on old cars that powered the headlights, burned the headlights. That kind of shows you how old these knives are. It's kind of interesting to think about how things were back when these knives were being made. Here's a pretty standard one-piece sickle style can opener here. Schrade's is a little different. It's got a little different curve to it. And I like the way they do the lift. It's horizontal, requires no cutout in the scale, and it's very easy to get a hold of. And then finally there's the punch. There is a little cutout for the punch here so you can get your nail under the lip of the punch. And it's very broad at the base, tapering down to the point. But one thing I noticed about it, it has what appears to be like a sharpening choil. A little notch there, and I think that's to help you sharpen this edge if you'd like to. It could also be used for stripping small wires, I'm sure. But I think its primary use was like a sharpening choil. And I hadn't seen that before. Well, one other thing I wanted to mention about this knife before I put it down is that it did come with a blade edge. Of course, on this blade it's long gone, but it said something to the effect of a Schrade scouting knife. This next knife is not as old. I date it from somewhere in the 1940s. It does have the same tang stamp, so it would be pre-1946. But I think it's somewhere, during the wartime, World War II, because it has steel componentry. And that's during the period there when brass was in short supply, and a lot of it was being used for ammunition casing for the troops. So here you actually do have steel bolsters and a steel bail. You can see how it's cut out there, just kind of flat. And while it has brass outer linings, the center lining there is steel. Looks to be carbon steel like the springs. So what makes this knife so desirable is that it has Schrade's famous peach seed jigging. And this peach seed jigging on older knives is really desirable with collectors. And what I'm referring to here is this jigging pattern that resembles the surface of a peach pit. And Schrade was kind of famous for that. Other companies tried to emulate it, but they really didn't succeed. This is something that Case did up until the mid-50s, and a lot of people like to collect these. They can just tell a knife is a Schrade by looking at the bone covers. So it does have a nickel-silver badge and brass pins. As you can see, there's nothing on the badge here. The main blade is similar, but it has a long nail pull. And here's the tang stamp, which is the same. And this one's not been sharpened down as much, so you can see a little better the original shape of the blade. The screwdriver cap lifter on this one is not as broad. A little more narrow. They were no longer trying to put that gaslight key in there, obviously. The can opener is actually a little larger. If I were to hold it up to the other one, you would see it's a little bigger, but it's not any thicker, and it doesn't look quite as finely finished. And then the punch, there's a cutout here to get hold of it. It's the same punch basically, but this one does not have the little notch here, which I'm assuming is a sharpening choil for this edge. So I hope you enjoyed the little history lesson on Schrade and getting a look at two of their earlier unofficial Scout knives, one with pick bone and one with peach seed jigging. Hey, keep an eye on my All About Pocket Knives shop. I've said many times I'm kind of a catch and release collector. I don't keep everything I acquire. I have a few core collections I try to build on, but I sell a lot of other things. And I don't really collect Schrade, so these knives may soon appear on my shop. If you're interested in them, please go there and check them out. Thanks for watching.